Welcome to the D Plus Cast, where we discuss everything Disney Plus and beyond in the world of streaming entertainment. My name's Garrett.
And I'm Will.
And I'm Greg.
And I spent way too much time than I probably should have trying to come up with some sort of pun to introduce today's episode, but then I realized they've all been done and they're all pretty lame. So today we are discussing Hamilton.
Pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir?
That depends. Who's asking?
Oh, well, sure. Sir, I'm Alexander Hamilton. I'm at your service.
Hey fellas, how you doing?
All right, man. How are you, bro?
How was your Independence Day?
It was spent indoors like every other day. Although we did go for a little walk and enjoyed the many fireworks happening throughout the valley. It's nice that stuff hasn't slowed down at all. Our animals might not agree, but
yeah, my dog never usually has an issue with fireworks because they're not done on my street, but someone decided to be, super patriotic, if that's the way you want to describe them, and light some firecrackers right outside my window, and my dog was freaked out a little bit, so she got to sleep underneath the covers on July 4th.
So kind of a codependence day for her.
So obviously today, I mean, we're going to spend most, if not all, of this episode discussing Hamilton because I previously thought that the series finale of Game of Thrones was going to be the last time in a long time where we would have this communal experience where people are watching the same thing at the same time. We're all reacting. We're all in it together. And I was wrong because Hamilton ruled the day on July 3rd and everybody was talking about it. And so many people got to experience it for the first time. And we'll get to that. But a few things, a little housekeeping here. Greg, you have some stuff you want to say about HBO Max.
Oh, sure. Well, HBO Max.
We should probably come up with a little intro theme song for Greg's weekly HBO Max checking in.
Yeah, we should. We'll throw something together, or we won't.
Yeah, probably not, but maybe.
HBO Max remains as buggy and unreliable as expected, and as it has been the last couple weeks. I just wish that they would resolve this issue with Roku and Amazon already, because I don't like using my PlayStation 4 for this purpose. It is just continually a headache. All that said, I am slowly but surely falling in love with the content provided on HBO Max. I've been watching the new Looney Tunes show, which I think is up to snuff with the old classic cartoons. It really is. There's a new show by J.G. Quintel, creator of a regular show called Close Enough. That's about 30-somethings living in Hollywood, but it's an adult animated cartoon show, so that's kind of cool. Search Party's new season's there. Studio Ghibli is there. I watched the first Lone Wolf and Cub film. I don't know if you guys have delved into that, but
no.
For all of the Disney fans listening, for all the Mandalorian fans, Lone Wolf and Cub is appointment viewing. This is heavily influenced all the Mandalorian. So I really recommend it. I mean, it's a samurai, Western style samurai film shot in the 70s about this one samurai and his young baby son. So it's the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda going on adventures. It's pretty cool, and it's just full of excessive Kill Bill style blood spurting violence, which I always love. And then of course there's Friends, and I've been slowly but surely chipping away at it as the Rachel and Joey relationship begins to form, and I lose more and more interest every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm even considering starting The Sopranos, so that's big news.
Considered it.
I'm considering it.
I think it's something you should definitely consider.
6 years into my friendship with Garrett, or something like that, and I'm finally maybe considering it.
So, I like to keep up with the news, and not that this is that interesting, but I kind of want to acknowledge that I am still reading up on, Disney news. So Jude Law is in final talks to play Captain Hook in a Peter McPan live action remake.
Sure.
Do we have any feelings about that, or should I just move on?
I mean, sure. They make another Peter Pan every like 4 or 5 years, so it's hard to like really be opposed in any way. And some of them are pretty good, so why not? How can you get that excited though?
I never saw the Jason Isaacs one.
I haven't seen a Peter Pan.
That wasn't
Hook.
a Disney one. I don't know who made that. Hook ages worse and worse with every watch.
It does.
It
I
used to be,
still
one of
like
my
it, but
favorite
it's
movies.
yeah. I think Jude Law could make an interesting Captain Hook. Sure, why not? I have no real opinions on it, but
I think the problem with Peter Pan in general is that Peter Pan as a character is incredibly uninteresting. So when you're starting with the villain and then working your way backwards, like who are you going to cast as Peter Pan that's going to make me care? I barely care about Jude Law.
well, in a way, I mean, if we're gonna take it from that lens, it's a little like Batman, right? Batman is not that interesting of a superhero, but his rogues gallery, his foes are more interesting. So start with an interesting Joker.
I don't know if
work
that's
backwards.
true. Batman's got a struggle, an internal struggle, and he's got some strife in his life, despite the fact that he's got it all going for him.
I
with
mean,
his
he's
bank
certainly
account.
got more than Peter Pan. So I'm not trying to draw that exact comparison, just that he is more known for his iconic villains. Like you talk
No,
about the
that's-
films through the lens of his villains.
Don't back down, Will. So Batman equal to Peter Pan.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
it.
much, pretty
Okay,
much.
They're
awesome.
both just prancing around in tights. Yeah.
Neither one ever grows up. I get it.
Okay, so Greg, Will, walk me through your day on July 3rd. Did you wake up early? Did you watch it immediately? How did you experience Hamilton?
I saved it for the evening viewing.
Okay.
It was going to be post dinner. Let's sit down and really enjoy this like we would a movie on a Friday night. And we really did enjoy it. I don't know if we're delving into that just yet, but it kind of exceeded all expectations. And I will say that compared to our last podcast, I much prefer watching movies I consider to be good than watching John Carter, because that was a disaster.
So Greg, this
Yeah.
this was, what was your knowledge? Was this your first introduction to Hamilton? Was it all hype and this was just your first introduction?
Right. Well, yeah, I'd only heard the hype. It's always been positive. I never doubted that it was positive, but really, I knew very little about it. I just kind of imagined it was going to be like, my name's John Hancock, and I'm here to say I signed my name in an enormous way. And it was much better than that. And to be honest, my knowledge of who Hamilton himself is and Aaron Burr is limited to Hamilton's on the 50, and I saw that Got Milk commercial in the early 90s. Hey, Burr! That was like it. That was really all the knowledge I had historically. So, although I know that this is not 100% historically accurate, I appreciated the small amounts of history lesson I probably got by watching this. But really, it was a fantastic thing to watch, and I enjoyed it way more than I expected, and I'll happily watch it again. The music is great. As a lover of rap music, especially more so when I was younger, but they really stepped it up and exceeded expectations. So I dug it big time.
Well, Hamilton is on the $10 bill, so that sort of
Oh, my mistake.
that shows how little you knew
I was
about
like, I thought that was
Hamilton
a 10.
and
There you
and-
go. There you go.
and United States currency. So that's fine.
Whoops.
Will, you just watched this recently, right?
Yeah.
So you waited a bit. You watched it for this podcast. You weren't
did.
as excited.
So
Did-
I'll say a little bit about my experience with Hamilton. I'm a big musical guy. Maybe not a big musical guy. I like musicals. My family, we would go see musicals when I was younger. Phantom, Les Mis, Rent, Wicked, all kind of the big name brand ones. And so Hamilton should have been up my alley. That said, I was living in Los Angeles when Hamilton was super big, and I was going to parties, and every single party with theater kids would end in them all rapping songs from Hamilton that I had no idea the lyrics to. And that was the point where I was like, all right, I'm sure this show is good, but I'm not going to bother with listening to the soundtrack, any of this kind of stuff. But I'm one of the people that got around to watching it now that it's on Disney Plus. It's like, oh, I can watch it from my from my house. And I got to echo Greg's sentiment. Obviously, it's huge for a reason. It was really fun. I was expecting it to be a little bit more Schoolhouse Rocky than it was. I'm glad that it was not. There's a lot that I find this often with musicals. In the moment, it's all kind of blurring together, and then after it's over, I'm like, oh, I remember that song and this verse, etc. And I've been listening to it. I've been listening to a few songs on it, a few songs from it on repeat leading into this. So yeah, I get why it's huge. Became a big fan. Although I agree, there's probably some stuff historically that maybe didn't.
And
get
we'll
the
get
shine
to, we'll
it
get to
deserves.
that.
Yeah,
We'll get to that. I'm just surprised that this was, and frankly, I'm in the minority. You guys are in the majority. There were a lot of people who just experienced Hamilton for the first time on Disney Plus, and I think that's a great thing, and we will talk about that. For me, I am the complete opposite of you two. This was not my first experience. So Hamilton opened on Broadway in August of 2015, and right? Yeah, let me double check that. Yeah, opened on Broadway in August of 2015, and you know, I'd heard the hype and all of this, and finally I was on the East Coast for a wedding in May of 2016, and driving from Montreal to Vermont. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to download this soundtrack. I'm going to give it a listen and see what all the hype is about. So I listened to that soundtrack on loop for probably like the next 6 months. I was working out to the music. I was, going on jogs. I was learning the lyrics. But the second I heard that opening number of Alexander Hamilton in the car driving, I said, oh, wow, this is different. This is different. And of course, my fiance and I tried to get tickets when we were in New York every time. We were unsuccessful. We finally got to see it on stage when it came to Los Angeles a couple of years back, paid like $300 a ticket. I don't regret that money at all. We were actually supposed to see it again for my birthday, but then the shutdown happened. So didn't get to do that. So I love this show. And I've said it before, and I say it to anybody who will listen. I think it is a once-in-a-generation masterpiece of its kind, like of its medium. There is nothing in theater that can touch Hamilton in the past 25 years, at least. And I think we're going to be talking about it and watching it and referencing it for another 25 years, another 50 years. Frankly, I find this thing to be like the Godfather of Broadway. At least the new Godfather of Broadway.
Yeah, it's the most modern feeling. Like the music is modernized. It doesn't feel like old Broadway. They took modern hip hop and modern like pop music, and they made it fit on the stage in a frame that normally we expect to hear that same kind of show tunesy music, and it's not that. It's really something that you would just listen to in your car because it's just as high of a quality as any of the other stuff that's playing on the radio, if not better. So it really kind of reframes what you can do on Broadway and the kind of music that I think we can get accustomed to coming out of musical theater going forward. It like reframes it entirely.
I mean, I think I think that's what ultimately we're going to get to, right? Is it's a bit big and grandiose to say that it is like a Godfather of Broadway, but I think it is going to be an inspiration to a lot of different types of musicals that are going to come out, right? We've seen a different way for people to do things, and I think it's not too far-fetched to say that it is going to usher in that kind of new era.
I do not like to speak in hyperbole. I do not like to make these big declarations like this very often, so that when I do, they mean something. And when I was talking about Hamilton to anybody who would listen, and even like I'm texting with my mother, and I'm like, "So you're gonna watch Hamilton?" She's like, "Well, I don't know. I heard it's hard to understand. It's a lot of like really fast rap music." I'm like, "Well, listen, if you don't want to participate in, a once in a generation, maybe once in a lifetime type phenomenon, phenomena. I'll never get that right. Phenomena. An iconic piece of art that has captured the cultural zeitgeist like Hamilton, then it's not my responsibility to convince you, right?
Yeah.
If you want to miss out on it, you go right ahead. But, Greg, you were discussing the whole idea of it being different than most Broadway. So I'm not sure how much you know of the writing of the show, but Lin-Manuel Miranda, he's on vacation from In the Heights, and he's reading the Hamilton biography by Ron Chernow, and he's reading all of these debates, which are based on primary documents that we have in this country's history. Unlike a lot of other countries, we have a lot of this stuff just written down, which is cool. And he sort of saw it as battle rap. And I think that's where he started branching out.
Very cool.
And building the show. And it's so rare for somebody to conceive of something and to execute it so wonderfully and to see it happen and have people care about it. It's like the trifecta.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I will say, Garrett, to your mother's concern about it being a very fast-paced rap music, you might not be able to catch all the lyrics. For one, I do, as I understand it, there are more words per minute in Hamilton than like any other Broadway show. And if you were to like pace it out at the pace of a normal Broadway show, it would have ended up being like 6 or 7 hours long rather than the I think it's under 2.5 hours or so that it is. But I'll say that while watching it, we just decided to turn the captions on. I don't normally do that. A lot of people do. I don't normally, but I did. I flipped on the captions, and I was able to kind of pick up everything that you don't always get, especially when you're rapping at such a fast pace like they are there. So I thought that was very helpful, and I probably appreciated it. My wife was saying like maybe we even appreciated it more than someone watching it on Broadway the first time around could have, because we were able to kind of absorb all of the dialogue and really understand what they were saying. Whereas that might have just gone over your head. It sounds impressive and it's beautiful, but you didn't necessarily understand all of the words and catch all the nuances there. So being able to watch it like this in our living rooms with directed for camera, right? Like there's close-ups and they're cutting in and we're getting these emotional close-up shots, and the staging again like must have been really fantastic to see in a theater, but when you put it onto a television screen and you transfer it to this medium, now the camera's moving around and we're kind of getting all these different angles, and it really makes it much more than just a theatrical experience. It was a cinematic experience.
Yeah, we're a closed caption household, with few exceptions. We tend to turn it. We were watching Curb Your Enthusiasm one day, and we had to turn it off because sometimes the closed captioning can just step on a punchline and really like suck the wind out of that laugh.
The comedy, yeah.
But everything else, we keep the closed captioning on all the time. We did it for Hamilton. It helps. It helps with your comprehension of trying to, you're listening, you're reading. For me, when I saw the show on stage for the first time, I had listened to the soundtrack hundreds of times, so I knew the songs. But without closed captioning, no one has any idea what what's his name?
Lafayette.
Yeah. That was
no one has any idea what Daveed Diggs is singing as Lafayette and Thomas Jefferson. And I think that's part of the brilliant performance, but it is nice to see exactly what he's saying and have that at our fingertips now with Disney Plus.
Well, I totally agree. I saw a tip to watch it with closed captions on Twitter, and I was like, all right, I'll try it out, and I think that made a huge difference. But another point that I think you brought up, Greg, that I wanted to touch on too, is the way that it has faithfully taken the theater experience and brought it into the home, right? So I think one of the things to talk about, and I'd be interested in getting y'all's thoughts on this, like we have seen huge successful Broadway shows flop and flop and flop when they come to the movies. We get Les Mis, even Rent to an extent. There's other ones that have been good too, but for the most part,
very rare
and very challenging. Over the past year, we've seen a few of these like musical live adaptations like Grease, and they tried the Rent Live, but had the whole issue with I think Roger breaking his leg right before the actual recording or the airing of it. I am wondering if this is going to be the new medium, the new approach to bringing musicals into the home or bring it into a wider audience. Or do you think we're losing something by not being able to take those bigger moments and turn them into actual like movie scenes and a narrative that way?
I think movies are not plays and plays are not movies. And they're completely different things. And I loved the audience interaction with the performance in Hamilton. I thought it adds that energy. And frankly, the beauty of theater is that each performance is different. And each performance can be affected by the people watching it, by their reactions, by the noise levels. It's very, I did stage acting for 15 years, and it's a high. It's a high that's hard to come down from.
Yeah.
And I felt the way they filmed it was great. And would I have appreciated a couple more shots here, there? Could they have done this perfectly? I'd give it like a solid A- in terms of capturing what they wanted to capture. I don't think the whole theater experience, especially Broadway, it's expensive. It's very expensive. And by its nature, you are keeping out a huge segment of the population that might be interested in it. So while you may be missing something by not going to see Hamilton in a theater, I don't think I haven't seen anybody criticize the existence of this on Disney Plus as like, an abomination towards the theater experience. It should only be, they're not like baseball writers,
right.
where these baseball purists who are like, don't change the game. No, they're like, no, this is clearly the next step. And the fact that so many people have access to this at their fingertips. I did the math. You could watch Hamilton on Disney Plus every day for the next 2 years for less money than a single nosebleed ticket to a single night performance.
Wow.
And the fact that Hamilton is even on Disney Plus, I said to my fiance the other night, I said, so now I'm a Disney Plus subscriber for life. Like, for life. While people say, Mandalorian came, went, great. There's nothing new really coming that's exciting. I totally agree. The Disney library is vast, but do I really need all of these movies at my disposal? Probably not. Hamilton, the fact that I have Hamilton at my fingertips whenever the hell I want it for $6.99 a month, that's worth it for me. You have my money, Disney. Take it. I just need this at my disposal whenever I want it.
Well, I think that was the thing that stood out to me too. This is the first big Disney Plus appointment TV thing, right? Mandalorian had a little bit of that effect, but we've been ever since we launched this podcast, we've been complaining that they're not giving us enough of a reason to stick with it. They're not, creating these moments for people to come in and bring in things. They're just kind of like, oh, we've got everything. Nah, do with it what you will. So I'm hoping that they continue to do stuff like this. And obviously this worked. Otherwise they wouldn't have shut off the free trial right beforehand, right?
Right. Yeah. So Disney had a 7-day free trial for any, people who wanted to try out Disney Plus. And then 2 weeks before Hamilton was about to drop, they took that away. They wanted people to pay for this. And I don't blame them. This recording was made in 2016. And it went through a bidding war with a ton of people. And finally, Disney won. Disney acquired this recording. I don't know, what do you call it? A film? A recording? They acquired the Hamilton film, let's call it.
Sure.
For a record-breaking $75 million. That's the most expensive acquisition of a single title in, Hollywood history.
Wow.
And there's a reason for it. And I've been talking about it for years. I've said it on Facebook, not that anybody cares, but I know that I have written receipts that Bob Iger and Disney know that, much like the Kansas City Chiefs signed Patrick Mahomes to a 12-year contract, When you have somebody young in their prime, you want to get the most out of them.
Yeah.
And Lin-Manuel Miranda, it started with Moana. When he came on to Moana and wrote music for Moana, I said, oh, they're starting to, they're starting to court him. You know, maybe ask him out to the dance. And then they throw him in Mary Poppins Returns. And I'm like, oh, okay, they want to go steady. And then the second it was all building up to this Hamilton acquisition. And I haven't read through the contract. I can't see anything online about what it actually includes. As far as I know, the 75 mil only applies to the film. We all know that Disney's not in the film business. Disney is in the branding, the merchandise, the parks. That's their cash cow. So I think there are going to be deals down the line that will allow Disney to, who knows, throw a Hamilton mini performance in the middle of the America Pavilion in Epcot. I don't know.
Yeah, or open a whole Hamilton show or ride or something in one of those parks. Like you
Mickey
know
Mouse plushies dressed as George Washington and Hamilton, and just there's so much money to be made that this 75 mil just feels like a deposit. It's like when Bob Iger acquired Lucasfilm and Marvel. You see $4 billion, and they've already made that money back. And they're going to be making money till the end of time. I guess what I'm trying to say is this is only the beginning. And this was only the beginning for Disney's use of Hamilton, but I think the reaction to it will also cause Disney to dig into their vault. They've got a ton of Broadway shows. And why wouldn't you try to capture them in a similar way and throw them on Disney Plus?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously nothing else is Hamilton, or at least not at the moment. But if
The Lion King on Broadway though is close in terms of of critical praise and popularity.
Yeah.
In terms and also when you talk about the cultural aspect of it, people want to see The Lion King on Broadway. A lot of people haven't been able to afford it. Do what you did with Hamilton. Throw it on Disney Plus.
I would turn that on before I turn on like the most recent adaptation of Lion King, and probably even more than the original. Like not more often, but I'm more willing to give that a new look, right? So
Agreed.
I think it'd be really interesting if they did go in that direction. I have a question that's a divergent from that topic.
Go for it.
Oscars? Question mark.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too.
What do we think?
Well,
I don't know
what are the
what it falls
rules.
under.
Yeah, what are the rules of the Oscars anymore? Are they going to be able to uphold those rules they've been so stringent to these last few years? This idea that we shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't be nominating anything that isn't actually playing in a theater. That might be crazy for the year 2020.
Right?
Otherwise, what? Sonic the Hedgehog's the only thing that's going to be nominated for a freaking Oscar?
The Way Back. I saw that one, the Ben Affleck basketball movie,
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a big. I mean, I know Christopher Nolan. He's pushing so hard. He's trying so hard, you guys.
He's still trying.
He's trying so hard. He needs it so bad. But but yeah, I mean, like you'd have to expect that they're going to need to amend the rules a little bit because I don't foresee there being enough movies to even qualify for your standard, 10 Best Picture nominees. Like, what would even be on that list right now if we're going by the old rules?
Well, they already pushed the Oscars telecast to what? I think April or
that sounds right.
They've pushed it a bit. So that they can keep pushing it.
Sure, but the window of what's eligible, I don't think that's changing.
No. The eligibility window has changed as well.
Oh, really?
And it will continue to evolve as, the world situation continues to evolve. So I don't think that's probably a conversation for another day, but the conversation for today is this Hamilton eligible for an Oscar? I don't think so. I think if anything, it might be eligible for an Emmy.
It's definitely eligible for an Emmy.
Yeah,
sure.
and even
it will win that category.
Well, sure.
Which we don't even know what category it goes under. Right. So
there's I don't know all the categories offhand, but it definitely fits into a a live pre-taped performance category of some kind.
I mean, there's like 18,000 Emmy categories.
Yeah.
Like, if anything has taught us, if watching television during quarantine has taught us anything, it's that 80% of the people appearing on television have Emmys in the background of their Zoom calls, just sitting on shelves, whether it's local news or daytime or whatever. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what it's eligible for and what kind of momentum it continues to ride. But the momentum kind of halted a little bit with a newfound backlash to Hamilton. It's a complicated subject to address, but I think the first thing to point out is that Hamilton came out in 2015, and then Hamilton the film, which is the exact same Hamilton,
Right.
came out on Disney Plus in 2020. And you have to be living under a rock to think that our society, our American culture, has not changed in those 5 years. So, Will, I know you wanted to touch upon this.
Yeah, I mean,
run
I
with
think
this?
I was doing some research about this morning, and even Manuel Miranda has said basically what you just said there. People have been asking him what has changed about Hamilton, and his go-to response is that nothing has changed about Hamilton. It's the same. It's just that our society has changed so drastically, right? And there's some valid criticisms of the historical representation of a lot of these forefathers. Like a lot of them were slave owners. Where's the representation? Obviously, we have a diverse cast that's portraying a mostly white story. Where's the actual representation of the people that were going through this? And I think that that's a completely valid criticism. I do. I think there's also a valid response of not everything can be about everything. And a lot of what I was hearing from the cast, there's actually a couple of complimentary Hamilton interviews that you can watch on Disney Plus, where the cast speaks on issues like this, especially in the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests.
Yeah, I checked out a little bit of that. It's hosted by Robin Roberts, and they do touch upon it.
Yeah.
And good for them for actually,
Acknowledging it. It's not a thing I
actually
would have thought
discussing
Disney
this.
would have done. Yeah.
Right? It would be very Disney to just sort of sweep it under the rug.
Right. And I
just
think
hope that
what
it
they
goes
said,
by.
a lot of what they were saying was like, this wasn't designed to be the answer. Like theater often does not provide answers, it provides questions. And we hope that this inspires a new generation of people looking into historical stories that they weren't familiar with and figuring out how they want to interpret them and share them. And we hope that this sparks the conversation. And we're glad that it is sparking a conversation. But it's not designed to solve things, right? It's designed to start the momentum around things. So we're glad that it's doing it. But I think it would be we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on that at all.
I think not everybody, but I think a lot of people criticizing Hamilton kind of missed the whole subtext of the show. When you're watching Hamilton and you're telling the story about the founding fathers of the United States of America, right? All of whom are white, most of whom were slave owners. And they create they write this Declaration of Independence. They write this Bill of Rights, this Constitution that, frankly, did not apply to everybody living in the country that they created. Fast forward. We live in an age where cultural appropriation the term is used often. And it's usually when like white girls are creating a taco truck and using some grandma from Mexico's tortilla recipe to, make a business in San Diego. That's typically how we talk about cultural appropriation in the internet. When Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote this and decided to use music that was deep-seated in black culture, and then enlist a cast that was 95% people of color, many of whom who are black, I find the whole idea of it and the execution of it to be incredibly moving, that Lin-Manuel Miranda took the intellectual property of these white founding fathers and basically culturally appropriated it to include people of color, black people, people who are underrepresented in movies, television, politics, Broadway, boardrooms, to basically tell the story of this country through the eyes and through the mouths and through the words of people who built it and get no credit for it. I find the whole idea incredibly moving, and that subtext can be missed by a lot of people, but just the mere existence of it and how the show is built is a commentary on slavery, on racism, on prejudice, all of those things. So I felt, did they need to go, do a slavery subplot? No, I don't feel that was missing from it. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it feels like a lot of people are, unless they're explicitly addressing the fact that these guys had slaves, that nobody's going to really be satisfied by the story. And it's like, slavery's bad. We all know it. We don't endorse it. And he went out of his way to, again, like you said, like create a very diverse cast of talented actors to portray it, and to ignore the fact that these were all originally white people in the first place. And that's something that also like disappears in the background as you're watching it. You meet Aaron Burr and he's a black guy, and it doesn't matter when you're watching it. It all fades away to the background, and you just kind of let that stuff happen. And hopefully, and I would think that would be enough to at least, I don't want to be insensitive about any of this. I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. But,
well, you're not going to satisfy everybody, and I get that. But I think with today's audiences, like Will said earlier, they want something to be about everything, and something can't always be about everything. Like, I can't watch The Godfather and wish that that Diane Keaton participated in some of the hits, Like, why didn't Diane Keaton leave the gun and take the cannoli? Like, well, what kind of question are you asking here? Like, that's just not, it's not the movie. And also, this thing has existed for years. I don't even know what point I'm trying to make, but
it's a sensitive subject. It's a sensitive, complicated subject, and we don't have, and us three white guys don't have the answers.
Right.
Absolutely not.
But the truth is that Lin-Manuel Miranda made this with the best of intentions, and with the hope to, and with the intent of making it a much more diverse and open conversation and environment. And again, it didn't touch on slavery as much as some people would prefer. I think there is a line, though, and I read somewhere that the actor who played George Washington kind of acknowledges at some point in there his disappointment that they didn't acknowledge slavery in a bigger way, or that Washington felt some sort of shame over it. Do you know what I'm talking about, Garrett?
Well, they listen. They do acknowledge.
There's a particular line in one of the songs that someone else sings it. I wish I knew exactly what it was, but someone sings the line. It sort of pertains to the topic, and behind them you see Washington look disappointed in himself.
Oh, I think I know what it is. I think it's the cabinet battle when Hamilton's trying to build the nation's first national bank, and he's shaming Thomas Jefferson for the slave labor he uses in the South. And that's why New York has debts and Virginia doesn't. Like, Virginia's not in debt because you don't pay for labor. And right. I'm guessing that George Washington in the background has some sort of reaction, like physical reaction to that. Is that what you're saying? Like some sort of facial reaction?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
They definitely make mention. John Lawrence his whole character, like, motivation is about ending slavery, right? And I guess just because it's not a huge plot point, people feel it's sort of being whitewashed, which I respectfully disagree, because I think just the existence of the show as it is a comment on systemic racism, is a comment on slavery, and is a commentary on the original sin of the United States of America. And I don't know, I'm moved when I think about it. And that's as a white guy, and maybe that's some of my like white guilt, and I'm thinking that like, oh, look at this beautiful show, and it makes me feel better. I totally accept that maybe that's what I'm thinking. Like maybe that's where it's coming from, that it makes me feel good. And maybe something like this shouldn't make me feel good. Maybe it should make me feel more uncomfortable.
It's tough. I don't know. For me, the best way to think about it is that it's very much an Obama's America musical that we're now viewing through the lens of Trump's America, which are two very different things. And I don't think that that's the right answer, but that, because who's even to say what either one of those is? And again, we're three white guys that are trying to be like, you know, it's okay to not talk about slavery if you do it this way. But
well, it's true. We can't ignore the fact that this country has changed dramatically over the past 5 years.
And I mean, it came out like 4 weeks after the start of the Black Lives Matter protests too, which is very, you know, one of the things that one of the cast members was saying, and I wish I remember which one it is, but if you watch those videos, you'll see, was saying that he dedicated his final performance to Philando Castile, and then now he's dedicating this to George Floyd, and it's like, yeah, it's 5 years apart, 4 years apart, and it feels like nothing has changed, even though everything has changed, you know? Anyways, I don't know. It's tough. But the King George guy is real funny, so let's give shout-outs to that.
I think what we just talked about was incredibly important and necessary to discuss, and frankly, it warrants more discussion, but I also really want to delve into the show as a show. So... did you guys recognize Jonathan Groff from anything that maybe you've watched on Netflix?
No, I can't say that I have.
No,
He's the lead in Mindhunter.
Oh, no way. I like that show. I was bummed they canceled it.
They didn't really cancel it. David Fincher just said like,
Oh, right. They were just kind of
I don't have time for this for at least 3 years.
Yeah.
King George really is a delightful little break from the story throughout. It's just like this fun little like transition where they put this guy who's just like this blatant villain. Like you just, I know there's no need for more of him, but I would love if there were more scenes of King George.
I love that he just like saunters through that one scene.
Oh, it's so great.
It's so good.
I said last night when I was rewatching it again that I just don't think this show works as well as it does without the little appearances by King George. And his whole attitude, and just the first song, he's completely frozen, and then he starts getting more mobile as the show goes on, and more feisty, and just Jonathan Groff just spitting out of his mouth, which only makes you think more about coronavirus.
True.
Like all the spit coming out of these actors' mouths. I know from experience, when you're on stage and you're singing and you're looking to project, like you don't think about spitting. You just let it fly. So what were some of the numbers that are your favorite? Since this was your first time witnessing Hamilton, listening to it, what songs, performances really stood out for you?
Well, I can say, you know, it usually takes me a while to like solidly pick a few, but the things that I remember the most right now are help me with the title, but In the Other Room or Not in the Room. That
Room
one.
Where It Happens.
The Room Where It Happens. That one's great.
Oh yeah.
And then obviously the finale, not the finale, but Hamilton's finale, The Duel, is just so well crafted and directed from a stage performance perspective. Which actually there's a little fun fact.
We love Will's fun facts.
Love my fun facts. The bullet, the woman that is escorting the bullet across the stage also appears in the bullet form in a few other areas. She's like becomes this like representation of death in a couple other scenes. We see her shake hands with John Lawrence before he dies, and she also sends Philip to the duel to tell him where Eker is, who ends up killing him. So that
Yeah,
she
quite
just,
a few articles written about her over the past
Yeah,
week.
very
Played
cool.
by Ariana DeBose. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But yeah, a lot of cool stuff going on in the background. And I think what really stands out to me in terms of the choreography and the ensemble for Hamilton, which can always just be, it can be fun when you're watching a Broadway show, but then you listen to the soundtrack and you just get frustrated, are these like 2-minute long dance breaks
Sure.
that happen in every Broadway musical to basically add time and to add performance. And every single piece of choreography in this show is complementary to the lyrics and to the characters that are performing those lyrics.
Yeah, it's always
so
moving. It's
It's very
show.
interpretive. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more interpretive dancing than it is, strike it, jazz hands. There was no tap dancing number,
Yeah, it's not. It never devolves into just a performance. It's always story related. Anytime there's any sort of dancing or I mean the whole thing's a musical. There's music throughout, but like every lyric, every moment is just to help move the story along further, and it's never just like you going like, wow, look, everyone's doing a fun dance. Like they're doing a dance in the context of what's actually happening, which kind of separates it from a lot of other musicals where a lot of times it's just kind of like, and now we burst into song because it's time for song. This is from start to finish. It's one long story. That's what I really love about the opening. You asked what our favorite songs were, and I was like, I like that opening song. And then I realized that opening song is 4 songs. That's just one scene that just seamlessly flows from one into the net, from one song into the next, and it just feels like one giant awesome opening number by the end of I want to say it's, so they do the Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr, My Shot, and then the Story of Tonight, and that's all like one fantastic 15-20 minute opening song that just really like blows you away and starts to show off with a bang. So that was like that really blew me away because it started off like stellar. And then another song that I really appreciated was Satisfied, which is the one sung by what's the character's name? Angelica, right. The use of that the spinning, I'll call it a giant lazy Susan in the middle of the stage.
Yeah, the rotating stage is great.
Unbelievable. And then the way that they light her and everything else kind of almost seems to fade into the darkness, look a little black and white while she's still in full color, and things slow down around her. Just like really brilliant use of their staging, and it's fantastic. The whole show has this, it's amazing because it takes place over the course of many years, and it takes place in a number of locations, but there's only one set. There's just the balconies and the stairs and this revolving stage. And despite the fact that we go from location to location to location and the time passes on, it's all so smooth, and it's really just a brilliantly directed show.
Yeah, I think Satisfied is probably widely regarded as the crowning achievement of both songwriting and performance for Hamilton. I think it'd be rare. People might have different favorite songs, but I think when you're talking about, like, if you were to really pinpoint the brilliance of this show, it's Satisfied, and it's excellent. I don't know, have you guys heard of the Hamilton mixtape?
Yes.
No, what is that?
Okay, so this originally was going to be a mixtape of some sorts, right? And then Lin-Manuel Miranda was invited to the White House, and he sort of tested out some material on the Obamas. You can find it on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen it.
My God.
Greg?
No,
I've seen clips.
Okay.
I'm thrilled the White House called me tonight because I'm actually working on a hip-hop album. It's a concept album about the life of someone I think embodies hip-hop, Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah, we'll play a little bit of a clip. We'll throw it in here.
How does a bastard orphan son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean by providence, impoverished in squalor, grow up to be a hero and a scholar. The $10 founding father without a father got a lot farther by working a lot harder, by being a lot smarter, by being a self-starter. By 14 they placed him in charge of the trade and charter, and every day was slave.
Yeah, so he's basically, in the Obama clip, he's going through the whole the first song, basically. Like, it's an early draft, and you can tell. But yeah, originally this was going to be like a mixtape, and then he changed it and read a whole show based on it. So they released a Hamilton mixtape. You can get it wherever you listen to your music. Maybe it's where you listen to our podcast. Maybe you're on Spotify and you want to go listen to it. There is a rendition of Satisfied that's sung by Sia and Queen Latifah that is just incredible. It is so good. So go listen to that the second you're done with this. My favorite songs throughout the entire show, the song that are probably the songs that move me the most, and those are Dear Theodosia and One Last Time. I just find this whole, and referencing our previous discussion, maybe it is romanticizing these men more than it should, but I think the whole idea of, in Dear Theodosia, you've got these two fathers who are fighting for something that they will leave to their children, that their children will inherit and then build upon, and so on and so forth, is just a really beautiful motif, beautiful theme. And then One Last Time, it just, the voice of Chris Jackson as George Washington singing that, like, soulful, almost like gospel choiry, like, cry of a goodbye. I love it. I get chills thinking about it. I love it. I love everything about this show, and I'll fight anybody who says otherwise.
It was a great show. I want to ask. I assume we're going to be wrapping up shortly. I want to get to the ending. I have there's a big question about what is the meaning. Ahead. What is the meaning of Elizabeth's gasp at the end? Seems
Eliza.
I'm sorry, Eliza's gasp. What does that mean? Has been a question I'm seeing floating around on the internet a lot. Some people interpret it as she finally sees Alexander in death. She dies and joins him. Another popular theory is that, considering she spends the rest of her life trying to tell the story of Hamilton himself, and that perhaps that gasp is actually a fourth wall break, seeing the audience having watched Hamilton. Do you guys have any opinion on that?
That's how I feel about it. I've heard, I think when I was listening to the soundtrack for years before seeing the show, right? I always thought like the gasp was basically like her dying, like it's the end of her life, right? But then seeing it visually, I think it's the latter thing you said. It's the final song of the show is her going through her resume of all of the accomplishments she made in the names of other men, right? In the names of other people. And I think that gasp is her breaking that fourth wall, seeing the audience, and realizing that somebody, while this show is not called Alexander Hamilton. The show's called Hamilton, right? So why wouldn't it be Eliza Hamilton looking out at the audience and realizing that somebody's telling her story?
Maybe that's what it is. I mean, is there any sort of confirmation? Has Lin-Manuel Miranda confirmed that, or is this just a conversation that's just going to go on forever, where people are going to interpret it however they want?
Lin-Manuel said there's no real answer. It's basically up to the actress. I think each actress has their own little interpretation and inspiration for how they play the gasp, how they feel about the gasp, what it means to them. But frankly, if we're going to get all like Sopranos series finale ending on this, it's all right there for you guys. Like, she's looking at you, she's gasping, she's just moved that we are watching her story after she spent her life telling other people's story. That's Occam's razor, guys. The simplest answer is usually the right answer.
Our estrangement, I've got a small query for you. What comes next? You've been freed. Do you know how hard it is to lead? You're on your own. Awesome! Wow!
So we've got a little we've got a special edition of Re-IP, I guess, here that we'll call What Comes Next. What comes next for Hamilton?
Well, I can tell you about EduHam. Have you heard about that? It's
I have.
This Hamilton education program where they encourage students to find their own stories in history and create their own pieces of music around it, submit it into the program, and they will promote some of the ones that they see, something along those lines. So
That's awesome.
it is awesome.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a lot of what does come next. You know, I don't expect Lin-Manuel to come out with Hamilton 2. I think what comes next is the legacy left by this performance and this cast, this ensemble. What's it called? What do they call it? The company. By this company. And it is viewing
You can
history
all three
through
are
different ways.
acceptable.
Yeah, for sure.
Cast, ensemble, company. Don't let the theater dorks shame you, Will, for using the wrong terminology.
I'll be completely honest. Watching this made me want to be like, "Oh, I miss LA already." It's like I miss
Because
my
LA's really known for its live theater.
I miss my dorky theater friends.
Oh, your dorky theater friends. Yeah.
The EduHam sounds really like a really cool project. I would love to see a Genghis Khan musical.
It'd be interesting, sure.
Why not?
I don't know a lot about him, so
I think what this show does is it empowers groups of young people who rarely feel represented, right? I mean, this past week we had a Supreme Court ruling that was probably the most consequential Supreme Court ruling in terms of Native American indigenous rights in decades, and it played second fiddle to something involving the president's tax returns. So when you're talking about representation, it exists in all sorts of, it exists on stage, it exists in the news, in papers and media, all sorts of places. So speaking of Disney Plus, Schoolhouse Rock is on Disney Plus, right? So when you turn on Schoolhouse Rock, you can really see the whitewashing of American history. There's a song that explores the westward expansion of the United States, and the song's called Elbow Room.
jeez.
It just goes.
I think I knew that. I just
right,
had forgotten.
and it's basically hey, all these white people are on the coast, and it's getting kind of crowded, so we need some elbow room. And it talks about Lewis and Clark and how they hired Sacagawea to be their guide, like they're gonna send Sacagawea $10.99 at the end of the year.
Well, she's definitely not a full-time employee.
Definitely an independent contractor.
Yeah, they're giving her 39 hours a week so they don't have to totally cover all the healthcare.
But when you look at, this Schoolhouse Rock is 60s, 70s era. That's the sort of the real beginning of television as the new medium, the 60s, right? And it's all whitewashed, and it's not the real story. And while Hamilton doesn't tell the whole story, it tells a version of the story that is closer to the truth than probably anything else we've seen that has been done in an entertaining way. I mean, you at the end of the day, you got to entertain. It's got to be good, and it does that. And it does not need to be truthful. It does not need to inspire, but it does. And the fact that it has inspired so many young people to explore the real American history, not the stuff that's in our 2 decades old textbooks that we learned off of. I don't know about you guys, American history class in my schools was Pilgrims, Revolution,
Civil War,
Civil War. So, that's a whole 100 years they just gloss over, right?
Yep.
And then you're in the 20th century, right? So there's a lot more to be told, and if this show inspires young people to tell it and also be inspired to tell it in such a brilliant and entertaining way that is able to capture people's attention, because that's what it's all about. It's about capturing people's attention, and that's what Hamilton achieves. That's its highest achievement. It's capturing people's attention the way it did.
Yeah, I think just to hit on that again, Leslie Odom, when I was watching one of those things, that he was a young singer reached out to him and asked him the question, don't you feel like, what do you say to this accusation? How do you feel being a cast of mostly people of color that are just telling a white person's story? Like, how do you feel about that? And he said, well, I don't feel that way, but what that excites me is I'm excited to see what you do. Like, I want to see how this inspires you to write that next story. And I think ultimately, if that's what this, aside from being a great musical, I think it can be that kind of cultural pivot point too, where hopefully we see more of this kind of thing and a deeper look at some of this stuff. I think we'll be ready for it.
So what are your final takeaways, Greg?
Final takeaways. It's a powerful show, man. It's a powerful show with great music, and I think despite the current controversies, and again this goes into what's happening in the world right now, I think Hamilton does a really great job of trying to modernize a story and to educate us about what really happened and to be inclusive with a cast of diverse people. I mean, it's probably my favorite musical now, aside from maybe Book of Mormon, which I definitely want to see adapted in a similar way as soon as possible, but obviously never on Disney Plus.
Well, where does South Park live? Does South Park live on HBO Max now?
That's right, and they've already deleted episodes, so who knows?
Oh, really? Oh, we'll save that for another episode.
That's a whole other thing. But yeah, no, I guess it would ultimately end up on an HBO Max type of place, which would then need to find a better spot than just my PlayStation.
I think my final takeaway is that they should have kept the two fucks in there.
Sure.
It's just, when you listen to the soundtrack, there's something just so effective about hearing Southern motherfucking Democratic Republicans. It just rolls off the tongue. So I'm sad that those aren't there. But,
yeah, I mean,
I've got the soundtrack with me. I can always listen to it.
Ultimately those fucks feel so insignificant, and I know it's Disney and they felt like they needed to hit a rating, but like, they played Schindler's List on network television when we were kids. They could throw in a couple fucks. It's fine. Everyone will be fine.
Listen, I've said this since this controversy came out, that As Good as It Gets is a PG-13 movie that features 2 F-bombs and side boob. So don't tell me that we can't have 3 F-bombs in a musical that's about American history. Okay? Yeah. I made such a good point that both of you are just silent right now.
It's your final thought, right? So
listen, I love Hamilton. I think you can tell by the way I've been talking about it. You guys seem to love it. I'm happy that you guys saw it. I'm happy that you guys had the opportunity to see it, that I can now share this with so many more people and have these discussions, whether they're difficult discussions about, our awful history, or if they're inspiring discussions about what this means for the future of our country. So I think with that, I think we've said all we can say about Hamilton. Greg, you have anything to plug?
No, just follow me on Twitter, I suppose, at It's Greg Hahn, and if you like toys and action figures, that's all I post on Instagram, at It's Greg's Toys.
It's really all he posts, so don't follow him if you don't want toys. He's just going to post toys.
It's only going to be toys.
Will, how about you?
Nah, just this podcast.
Awesome. Well, we hope you rate, review, subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at D+Cast, all spelled out. We also have a new YouTube channel. So, smash that subscribe button on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. We're all over the social places except for TikTok, because I'm an old man now, apparently.
And we
who's in his
value our
early
privacy.
30s. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's really important to say leave a review. I don't think we hit that hard enough. You gotta leave a review. That's how people find this.
Yeah, leave a review. Only if it's a good one, though. I don't want to have to hunt down, like, the terrible Yelpers who are just looking to ruin my life. If you like us, leave a review. If you don't like us, feel free to move on with your life.
Find someone that does and tell them to leave us a review.
Exactly. So until next time, don't throw away your shot. It's okay if you're not in the room where it happens. I hope you're satisfied with today's episode, and I'm feeling a little helpless right now, so we'll talk to you later.